At Thanksgiving, my sister mocked me. Some of us actually have careers. Everyone laughed. I just said, true, some of us also have receipts. I waited until dessert to drop the folder on the table. By the time she opened it, her husband's face was white. Thanksgiving has always been my least favorite holiday. Not because of the food, but because of the people. My family has a way of turning gratitude into a competition. Whose job is better? Whose kids are smarter? Whose house smells like success? This year, it was at my parents' place, a big suburban home that somehow looked like it had been staged for a magazine shoot. My mom was already fluttering around, trying to keep the turkey from drying and the conversation from turning toxic. But that's impossible when my sister Tara is involved. Tara, the golden child. The one who made it. Corporate lawyer, 2 kids, a husband who looked like he'd been printed from a finance brochure. And then there's me, Emily, the freelancer. According to my family, that's code for unemployed. I walked in carrying a pumpkin pie I made from scratch. Tara greeted me with her trademark smirk and air kiss. Wow, she said, eyeing the pie. You actually cooked this? Must be nice having all that free time. I smiled, pretending not to feel the sting. Yeah, freelancing gives me that luxury. She laughed, loud enough for the whole table to hear. Some of us actually have careers, you know. The laughter spread like wildfire, my dad chuckling behind his wine glass, Mom forcing an awkward smile, Tara's husband shaking his head as if I were some kind of amusing failure. I just smiled, calm, collected. I'd been waiting for this moment, not out of revenge, but out of closure. Because this year, I came prepared. Dinner went on. The usual parade of fake affection and subtle digs. Tara dominated the conversation, talking about her big client win, her trip to London, her kids' new private school. Every sentence was designed to remind everyone she was winning. When dessert was served, I reached into my bag and placed a plain manila folder on the table. Nobody noticed at first. Tara was too busy telling everyone how stable her marriage was, how some couples just don't have what it takes to make it work. Her husband, Ryan, smiled tightly, the kind of smile that hides panic. That's when I looked at him, directly, calmly. He couldn't hold my gaze. I leaned back, let the silence hang for a second, and said softly, True, Tara. Some of us also have receipts. The laughter stopped. Forks froze midair. Mom blinked confused. Receipts? She asked. Tara frowned. What are you talking about? I tapped the folder once. I'll explain during dessert. And then I smiled again, just like I used to when Tara was being cruel and I had no power. But this time I did. See, 6 months ago, Ryan had contacted me. Not intentionally, but accidentally. He needed graphic design work done for his new consulting project. He'd found me through a mutual contact and hired me without realizing I was his sister-in-law. His business email led me to something interesting. Invoices, travel bookings, payments. All to a woman named Jessica, with notes like, weekend retreat, private room, and do not tell Tara. At first, I didn't want to get involved. It wasn't my business, but every family gathering since, Tara's cruelty had grown sharper. She mocked me for not being marriage material, for living paycheck to paycheck, for not trying harder. I took it quietly. Until tonight, when the pumpkin pie was cut and passed around, I placed the folder in the center of the table and slid it toward her. This, I said, is what I mean by receipts. Ryan's hand twitched. His fork clattered. Tara glanced at him, confused, then looked down at the folder. Emily, what is this supposed to be? I shrugged. Just some of your husband's invoices. The table went dead silent. Even the sound of the clock ticking in the hallway became deafening. Ryan's voice cracked. Emily, this isn't... I raised a hand. You don't have to explain. You paid for the work, after all. I just documented everything. Like a good professional. Tara blinked, her face pale. She pulled the folder closer and opened it. Slowly, like someone defusing a bomb. And when she saw what was inside, printouts of emails, screenshots of flight confirmations, hotel reservations, her expression changed from confusion to realization. To horror. She looked up at him, eyes glassy. Ryan? He opened his mouth, then shut it again. The color drained from his face. Mom finally whispered, What is going on? I stood up, smoothed my dress, and smiled. I think I've overstayed my welcome. Thank you for dinner. As I turned toward the door, Tara's voice cracked behind me. Emily, wait. But I didn't. Because for the first time in years, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Outside, the cold air felt clean, sharp, honest. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. "You ruined my marriage." I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, "No, you did," and hit send. The next morning, I woke up to 23 missed calls. 9 from my mom, 7 from Tara, 4 from unknown, which I knew was Ryan. And the rest? My aunt, cousin, even my dad. Each one probably rehearsing the same line. "Why did you have to ruin Thanksgiving?" I sat there in my tiny apartment, staring at my phone while sipping coffee that had long gone cold. The sunlight streamed through the blinds, catching on the manila folder now tucked into my bag. Empty, but heavy with what it had done. A quiet part of me felt peaceful, but another part trembled with guilt. Not because I told the truth, but because I knew what would follow. In our family, truth was never rewarded. By 9 a.m., the doorbell rang. I didn't need to check the peephole. It was Tara. When I opened the door, she looked nothing like the perfectly polished woman from last night. Her eyes were swollen, makeup smeared, hair tied back like she hadn't slept. She didn't wait to be invited in. She just stepped past me, clutching her phone like a weapon. "You had no right," she said, her voice shaking. "I had every right," I replied quietly. "You've spent years humiliating me at every dinner table, every birthday, every conversation. I was your punching bag, Tara. I just decided to stop being one." She turned on me, furious. "You destroyed my marriage," I sighed. "No, your husband did that when he decided loyalty was optional." Tara's lip quivered. "You could have told me privately. Why humiliate me in front of everyone?" I paused, meeting her eyes. "Because that's exactly how you've treated me. Public humiliation. Every single time." The silence stretched between us like a wire, tense, thin, ready to snap. Then her voice softened, almost pleading. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Mom's hysterical. Dad's furious. "Ryan left the house last night. The kids..." She broke off, wiping her eyes. I felt something twist inside me. Guilt, maybe. Or compassion. I couldn't tell. "I didn't want to hurt you," I said finally. "But I wasn't going to let you keep hurting me either." She sat down on my couch, staring at her hands. "You always think you're the victim, don't you?" I wanted to argue, but instead I stayed quiet. Because deep down I knew, in her world, power and pride were everything. Admitting vulnerability would never come easy for her. After a long silence, she whispered, "Ryan's been cheating for almost a year." I checked. "You were right." My chest tightened. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but I didn't move. We were still too far apart. She looked up, tears clinging to her lashes. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" I swallowed hard. "Because every time I tried to talk to you about anything serious, you made fun of me. I knew you wouldn't listen." Tara looked away, guilt flickering across her face. Maybe I deserved that. For a moment, we just sat there, two sisters who'd built their whole relationship on competition, suddenly realizing how empty it was. Then she stood up abruptly. "Mom wants us to come over tonight. She says we need to fix this mess." I exhaled. Of course she does. When Tara left, the apartment felt hollow again. I leaned against the door, staring at the spot where she'd stood. For years, I'd imagined this moment, her finally seeing me, finally understanding how cruel she'd been. But now that it was here, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like exhaustion. That evening, I drove to my parents' house again. The air was heavy with leftover turkey and tension. Mom opened the door with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Emily, sweetheart. Come in." Dad was sitting at the table, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Tara was already there, red-eyed but calmer. Ryan's chair sat empty. Mom started with her usual line. "We're family. We handle things privately." I raised an eyebrow. "Privately? Like how Tara handled my life every Thanksgiving?" "Don't start," Dad snapped. "You embarrassed this family." I let out a bitter laugh. "No, Dad. I exposed a liar at your dinner table. Big difference." He slammed his hand on the table. "You could have ruined those kids' lives." I met his gaze steadily. "And you were fine watching Tara ruin mine every year?" Mom tried to interrupt, voice trembling. "This isn't about you." "Yes, it is," I said. "It's always been about me not being enough. Not successful enough, not married enough, not perfect enough. But guess what? I'm finally okay with that." Tara whispered. "Emily." But I held up my hand. "No, let me finish. You raised us to believe that worth equals wealth, that whoever makes the most money or wears the best clothes wins. But life isn't a competition. I may not have a career like Tara's, but I have peace. I have self-respect. And after last night, I'm not going to let anyone take that from me again." The room fell silent. Even my dad had no comeback. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We just wanted what's best for you girls." I nodded slowly. Then maybe it's time to redefine what best means. For the first time, Tara didn't argue. She just looked down, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. After a long, heavy silence, she whispered, "I filed for separation this morning." Mom gasped. "Tara!" She looked up, her eyes tired but steady. "I'm done pretending everything's fine. Maybe Emily's right. We all need to stop performing." I exhaled, feeling something inside me shift. Maybe this wasn't about revenge anymore. Maybe this was about release. As I stood to leave, Tara caught my arm. "Emily," she said softly, "I was awful to you. I see that now. And I'm sorry." It was the first time in my entire life I'd heard her say those words. I smiled faintly. That's all I ever wanted. By Monday morning, I was trending. It started small. One of my cousins had filmed the Thanksgiving dinner argument on her phone. She uploaded a short clip to Facebook, captioned, "Family Drama Level Expert." Within 24 hours, it had over 30,000 views. By Tuesday, someone had reposted it on TikTok with dramatic background music, and the comments section exploded. That sister deserved it. Imagine thinking you're untouchable and then boom, receipts. The quiet one always snaps last. I wasn't tagged, but people didn't need names. Everyone in our town knew who we were. By midweek, my boss called me into her office, holding her phone with that awkward expression people get when they've seen too much. "Emily," she said gently, "you're kind of viral." I cringed. I noticed. She smiled sympathetically. "For what it's worth, I think you handled yourself with dignity. But maybe stay off social media for a bit. Too late for that." My inbox was already overflowing. Old friends checking in, strangers sending messages of support, even people sharing their own stories of golden child siblings and family manipulation. I should have felt vindicated, but mostly I felt tired. That night I turned off my phone and went for a walk, through quiet streets, under orange lamplight, where no one knew me as the Thanksgiving girl. For once, I just wanted to be Emily. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Tara. Subject, "I guess this is karma. Emily, I know you didn't plan for this, but everything's out of control. Ryan's company put him on leave. The kid's school called. People have been whispering. Mom won't stop crying. I hate that this is how it happened, but maybe this is what we needed. A wake-up call. I'm not asking for forgiveness yet. Just time, Tara." I sat there rereading it, heart heavy. For years I had begged the universe for justice, for her to feel even a fraction of what she'd made me feel. But now that it was here, it didn't taste like victory. It tasted like ashes. I typed back slowly. Subject, Karma Tara. I never meant for this to blow up. I just wanted you, all of you, to see me. Maybe this is the universe's way of forcing that. Take care of yourself. I mean it. Emily. When I hit send, I realized my hands were shaking. 2 days later, I got a call from my mom. Her voice was softer than I'd heard it in years. "Emmy, can we talk?" "Sure," I said cautiously. "We've been wrong," she said after a pause. "About you. About a lot of things." I blinked, surprised. "Mom, I'm not looking for apologies." "I know, but you deserve one anyway. Your father and I let things get out of hand. We should have protected you from all that teasing, not laughed along." Hearing her say that felt like the air had shifted around me, like a window had cracked open in a suffocating room. She continued, "I told Tara to come by Sunday. Maybe we can start over, quietly this time." I hesitated. "Mom, I don't want another fake family dinner. I want something real, no pretense. No one pretending we're perfect." She chuckled sadly. Maybe perfection's what ruined us in the first place. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel defensive. I felt understood. That Sunday, I drove back to their house again. Not for a confrontation this time, but for something smaller, quieter. Healing, maybe. When I walked in, there was no big dinner spread. Just coffee, pie leftovers, and 3 empty chairs. Tara came in a few minutes later, hair down, eyes tired but calm. She looked at me. "You okay?" "Better," I said honestly. "You," she smiled weakly. "Surviving." Ryan moved out. "The kids are confused, but I think they'll be okay." Mom placed a hand on both our shoulders. "You two have spent your whole lives trying to one-up each other. Maybe it's time to start having each other's backs instead." Tara laughed quietly. "Can't promise miracles, but I'll try." I grinned. "That's all I need." We sat down, 3 women surrounded by silence and crumbs, finally letting go of years of bitterness. For the first time, I didn't feel like the outcast. I felt like part of something again, something fragile, but real. That night after I got home, I opened my phone again. My viral video had now passed 1 million views. Someone had even dubbed it Thanksgiving Justice. Normally, that kind of attention would terrify me. But instead, I smiled. Because maybe the world wasn't laughing at me anymore. Maybe, just maybe, they were learning from me. I opened my camera and recorded a short video. Hey everyone, you might have seen that clip of me at Thanksgiving. I didn't plan to go viral. I was just tired of staying quiet. Family isn't always kind. Sometimes the hardest thing is setting boundaries with the people who made you. But I learned something. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you cruel. It makes you free. I hit post, turned off the lights, and sat in the quiet glow of my screen as the comments began rolling in. You're brave. This hit home. I wish I could do what you did. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. That night, I dreamed of a Thanksgiving table, but this time everyone was laughing with me, not at me. No cameras, no judgment, no masks, just family, learning to love each other for real. And when I woke up, I realized something. Maybe you can't change your past, but you can rewrite how it ends. And that's exactly what I did. 2 weeks later, just when things started to calm down, the internet found a new villain. Ryan. Someone from his office leaked screenshots, texts, receipts, even messages between him and a coworker he'd been mentoring. Turns out, my folder had just scratched the surface. I didn't post any of it. I hadn't said a word since the night of Thanksgiving. But somehow, the truth had a way of finding its light. The comments online flipped instantly. So the brother-in-law was cheating. The sister mocked her while her husband was doing that. Karma came quick. Emily's silence spoke louder than anything. I didn't feel joy, just closure. For the first time, everyone saw what I had known for years. That the shiny, perfect version of my sister's life was built on lies and shadows. But here's the thing about truth, it doesn't just destroy, sometimes it rebuilds. A few days later, Tara showed up at my apartment. No makeup, no walls, just her, the real her. I filed for divorce, she said quietly. I told Mom and Dad too. I didn't speak, just let her continue. He said it was all my fault, she continued, tears spilling over. That if I'd been a better wife, he wouldn't have looked elsewhere. I shook my head. You know that's not true. She gave a bitter laugh. Yeah, I guess I do now. We sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that used to feel awkward, but now felt like space. Healing space. After a few minutes, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small, old photo. Us, maybe 10 and 12, covered in mud, laughing like idiots in the backyard. You remember this? She asked. I smiled. We got in so much trouble. Yeah, she said softly. But we were happy. Before all of this. Her voice cracked. I miss that version of us. I took the photo from her hand and held it for a moment. Then let's start over. No pretending. No comparison. Just sisters. She nodded, eyes glistening. Sisters. That Christmas, for the first time in 5 years, we were all together again. No fancy house. No big dinner. Just takeout, candles, and mismatched plates. Mom said grace. But this time it wasn't about appearances, Mike. It was about gratitude. Thank you for bringing us through storms, she said softly. And thank you for second chances. We all murmured, Amen. And for once it felt real. After dinner, Tara stood up and handed me a small wrapped box. I didn't know what to get you, she said, so I made this. Inside was a leather journal. On the first page, she'd written, for the receipts you never needed to show, for the truths you carried quietly, for being stronger than I ever was. I felt my throat close up. Tara, she smiled through tears. You always said family should be more than words. So here's me, trying. We hugged for a long time. Mom sniffled behind us. Even Dad, stoic, gruff, hard to read, reached out and patted my shoulder. And just like that, something I thought was broken forever started to mend. Weeks later, I got an email from a producer at a talk show. They wanted me to come on and tell my story, the viral Thanksgiving redemption. For a moment, I was tempted. The attention, the validation, it called to the old part of me that needed to prove I was enough. But then I thought about Tara, rebuilding her life, Mom and Dad learning to listen, me finally at peace. I typed my reply, thank you for the offer. But this story's not about revenge, it's about repair, and that doesn't belong on TV. I hit send and closed my laptop. Spring came quietly that year. Tara found a small apartment nearby and started taking art classes again, something she hadn't done since college. Mom started volunteering. Dad learned how to text memes, which was both endearing and mildly terrifying. And me? I started writing again. Not about pain this time, but about growth, boundaries, and how silence can sometimes be louder than shouting. The night before my birthday, Tara called. "You know," she said, "you kind of changed all of us." I laughed softly. "I didn't mean to." "Maybe that's why it worked," she said. "You weren't trying to win. You were just finally being heard." I paused. "Feels good to finally have a voice." "Yeah," she said. "And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you, little sis." That caught me off guard. "You haven't called me that in years," she smiled. "Guess it's about time I started again." Later that night, I sat by my window, watching the city lights flicker. It hit me then. Revenge had never been the point. It was about reclaiming my story, my worth, and maybe the universe had needed to shake my world apart so it could finally fall back into place, piece by piece, truth by truth. So, I poured a glass of wine, opened my journal, and wrote the words that had been sitting in my heart since that Thanksgiving night. Sometimes, the loudest revenge is peace. And sometimes, the quietest people write the most unforgettable endings.